Hi, everyone. I'm Scott Jones. I'm a baby filmmaker and consultant, and I'm happy to moderate today's conversation, The Making of Queer as Folk. I am a cis white man. I am wearing a green shirt and a brown top hat, and I have a beard. And a beautiful smile that is grinning from ear to ear because I'm very excited to be here with these three fine folks. I just want to say that if you hear any clacking, it's not my nails against the table, it's my service dog Nemo walking around the space. So for this webinar, we have an ASL interpreter and a captionist who is a real person, not a robot. To view these captions, there is a button at the bottom you can click on for the live transcript. In addition, you can view the live captions in a separate window if that is more accessible to you. Please check out the link in the chat to do so. Throughout the webinar, when we mention links, they also will be provided in the chat. And this webinar is being recorded, and a copy of the webinar will be uploaded to RespectAbility's website by the end of the week. Before we kick off the panel, I wanted to mention that today's conversation is hosted in partnership with NBCU Launch, the umbrella brand that houses the comprehensive diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts across NBCU's television portfolio, which encompasses NBCU television and streaming, as well as Universal Studio Group. Among the NBCU Launch talent development programs and initiatives are the landmark NBC TV Writers Program and NBCU Launch TV Directors and Female Forward. I am very proud to have recently graduated from RespectAbility's Entertainment Lab, and I'm so excited that this event is in partnership with NBCU Launch and RespectAbility. If you don't know, RespectAbility is a diverse and disability-led nonprofit that works to create systemic change in how society views and values people with disabilities. Comprised of diverse disabled people, RespectAbility's entertainment and news media team partners with studios, production companies, writers' rooms, and news organizations to create equitable and accessible opportunities to increase the number of people with lived disability experience throughout the overall storytelling process. These initiatives, including the award-winning RespectAbility Entertainment Lab, increase diverse and authentic representation of disabled people on screen, leading to systemic change in how society views and values people just like myself. So for today's conversation, we will be hearing from the creator and cast of Queer as Folk on Peacock. I'm going to start by reading each panelist's bio, and then I'll ask each panelist to visually describe themselves. So I'll start with Stephen Dunn. He is an award-winning writer-director who served as the showrunner of Queer as Folk. He co-wrote and directed the Spirit Award and GLAAD Award nominated episode, The Son of Apple TV series Little America, and his debut feature, which I love and am obsessed with, Closet Monster, had its world premiere at TIFF 2015, where it won the Best Canadian Feature Award. Next is Andrew Gurza.
Sorry.
Sorry.
You're gonna, okay, well, I'll do this after. I'm disappearing now, bye.
You can interject anytime, feel free. Andrew Gurza is an award-winning disability awareness consultant and the chief disability officer and co-founder of Bumpin', a sex toy company for and by disabled people, which is so awesome. I'm so happy that that exists in the world. Andrew uses they, he pronouns and identifies proudly as disabled. Andrew has spoken all over the world on sex disability and what it means to be a queer cripple, including several podcasts. He is also the host of Disability After Dark, the podcast shining a bright light on disability stories, which won a Canadian Podcast Award in 2021. Yeah, Andrew, if you want to pop on too, feel free. If not, we can proceed. Ryan O'Connell is also here. He is an Emmy-nominated and Writers Guild Award-winning writer, actor, and producer who served as a writer for Queer as Folk. He previously created and starred in the critically acclaimed Special, a 4-time Emmy-nominated and Writers Guild Award-winning short-form series on Netflix, which he wrote and executive produced. O'Connell has also received a Special Recognition Award from GLAAD and a Visibility Award from the Human Rights Campaign. Before we go to questions, I'm going to ask each of our panelists to give a visual description. So let's start with, because I see you right in front of me, Andrew, take it away.
Hi, I'm a white, non-binary, cis-identified person wearing a bright pink shirt, and I'm a wheelchair user with short brown hair.
Thank you. Stephen?
Hey, I am a white cisgendered man with a beard and a black hat, and I am also smiling ear to ear because I'm very excited to be here today.
Hi, I'm Ryan. I'm white. My face is 90% glasses, and my internalized ableism is wearing a Nike shirt.
Awesome. Thank you all. So yeah, welcome. Thank you for being here. It's lovely to see you all. I'm just really excited because I loved the show. I loved your work. And I have a starting question for all of you, because there are a lot of aspiring and working producers, filmmakers, and creators here today. What kind of like led you to or brought you to storytelling and made you want to work in this industry? And anyone can take that, or I can choose, whichever.
Pick one of us. We're all too nice.
Okay, Ryan.
I can start. I'm from Newfoundland, from St. John's. I always loved movies growing up, and I just wanted, I got into storytelling, I think, because I just had some experiences in my life that I wanted to channel into. I wanted to put my experiences into something. I wanted to specifically work in the queer realm and tell stories from our community that I think don't often get to be told. I guess that's how I found myself here.
Awesome. And I mean, that's quite incredible considering, yeah, I'm calling in from St. John's right now. And it's
No.
I am. St. John's misses you, obviously, and Canada misses you. But it's like the easterly point of North America, isolated on the rock. So it's pretty incredible to hear that, and that we're just all so proud of you. So
so proud of you.
Why, for this hat or this shirt? Okay, I'll pass it off, I guess, to Andrew.
Sure. I've had to be a storyteller in order to be seen, and I think I never really wanted to do this kind of work when I was coming up. I wanted to be a lawyer. I wanted to go into law and do like big courtroom stuff. And then the more and more ableist I realized our system was, I was like, oh, I have a story to tell. I have to tell my story. And then when I started entering into my queerness and trying to access that, and realizing that I wasn't given a place in that community and wasn't even looked at as a viable sexual partner or as an option, I was like, okay, I have to tell this story, and I have to use my experiences as a disabled person to share that, because if I don't, I'm never going to be seen. So it really wasn't, I never really wanted to do it. I was pushed into it because I knew I had to, and I knew that if I didn't, I would be, stuck in not being seen and not being understood and not being accepted by community. So I forged my own path this way because I didn't really feel like I had a choice, and that's kind of how I ended up here.
Wow. And I must say, like, I know I follow you on Instagram, as you know, and I think I share like so many, like maybe every post you make.
At least once a week, there's
I
an
know,
essay.
because you capture like the essence of like what we're all feeling, and it's so beautifully said, and it's said in a way that is accessible. So thank you, all of your work. It's
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Ryan.
Well, growing up, I was always like a TV and film nerd. I mean, I loved like Rocky movies and like Parker Posey stuff and all the indie films of the 90s. And I really thought like best case scenario would be like me writing for How I Met Your Mother or something. I never like thought that my work could be personal or be about like disability. So, I mean, even when I started working in Hollywood, the business, it was like disability had not entered the chat like at all. And so yeah, it's sort of kind of, I wouldn't say it happened by accident, but it's been a really interesting turn of events because I never thought that I would be able to be given the space to talk about disability and write about disability. But now that they've given me permission, there's no turning back.
Sorry, you were from originally?
Oh, sorry, I'm from Ventura, which is like this kind of like little blue collar beach town near Santa Barbara / Ojai.
Okay, nice.
The epicenter of culture.
Okay, so let's just launch right in with a few questions for each of you about developing Queer as Folk. Stephen, just I guess in terms of you went from independent filmmaking shorts to feature that wowed everyone. I remember watching it and thinking, this came from Atlantic Canada. This is amazing. We've never had anything like this. To directing an episode of Little America. And how did you set out to reimagine such a like beloved series following all of that?
Wow, I don't even know. I've been clawing my way across the border, I guess, for a little while, trying to just like, I found it like, I found it always kind of hard to get the chance to tell like queer stories and in the way that I wanted. I never really saw myself represented even in a lot of queer storytelling sometimes. Queer as Folk was my first exposure to a queer community. When I was in Newfoundland at the time, like there was, God bless his soul, there was one queer person out in my high school. And it was just, I always admired him. He was so brave because it did not feel like a safe space. Like there was a lot of hate towards queer people and in my community, it's not really talked about a lot, but it created an environment that just didn't feel safe. And so I really didn't feel comfortable telling stories about my own queerness and my identity until I left Newfoundland, until I got to Toronto, which is where, ironically, the American Queer as Folk was shot,
right.
Which was my first exposure to a queer community. But when I got there, I actually found that my community and my family there wasn't really reflected even in this show. And so when I sought out the rights to Queer as Folk, it was because I really wanted to continue telling queer stories. And there is really no bigger franchise for queer storytelling than Queer as Folk. It holds such a special place in a lot of people's hearts, but it's only ever really represented a fraction of our community. So when I sought it out. I really wanted to expand the representation. I wanted to dive a little deeper. I wanted to explore queerness now and what it means in 2022, and to really lean into what the word queer means now. And so, that's when we started forming our family, which really started with Ryan. Ryan, I think, was the very first person I ever reached out to when I first got the rights to the show, and was someone I really wanted to collaborate with.
Awesome. I think you and I talked a little bit about this, but like for people here, what was that process like in terms of like the fact that the rights were just sitting there? Like, how did you find
Well,
that
no
out?
one knew that they were just sitting there. Actually, they Showtime had let the rights lapse by 1 year, and I don't think they knew that they were gone. And so I just snapped them up. They went back to Russell T Davies, and so I was already in the UK working on another project, and I was like, I had my pitch already. I'd already been working on the idea, and I was like, oh my god, like I'm just gonna go. Like I'll see if he'll take a meeting, and he did. He wanted to meet, and then I hopped on a train to Manchester, pitched him my take on the show, and he loved it and saw this as a way to like expand on the legacy of Queer as Folk. And I just took it and I never looked back.
That story is amazing. Yeah, I love it. You kind of answered the follow-up questions about like what aspects did you want to keep and what aspects did you want to change, but is there anything further that you want to say about that?
I mean, there was a lot. I mean, I didn't want to redo the same story, which they'd already done so well. I mean, multiple times. But we had to start in a place where our show is starting from within the character dynamics slightly from the original series, but ultimately like it takes itself into a whole new direction. But there were a lot of characters that I really wanted to have. That there was I have a I really wanted there to be a space for the disabled community to be able to exist in the show. First, there was Marvin, the character of Marvin, and as we started developing it. But actually, something happened as I was developing the show. I have an uncle, my uncle Patty, who has CP, came out to me at 60 as I was developing the show, and I told him I was developing Queer as Folk, and he whispered to me, he was like, I used to watch that show in my basement in secret. We were 30 years apart, but both of us were watching it in the exact same way. And that's when I was like, holy fuck, like this show has had such an impact on so many people who did watch it in private. And that's when, I was like, okay, I think there's another character. It's not really based fully on him, but I wanted to introduce the character of Julian into the show as well, who's in the chat right now.
Yeah, that's amazing. I also had that experience of watching it at night and also calling like those gay hotlines like that were like
Oh
Yeah,
my gosh.
did
And
it.
then my mom found the bill. It was like horrible. Anyway, you kind of talked about, we were gonna pivot to talking about Julian and Marvin. And I like, obviously your uncle, you said that, but how did you ensure that they like remained authentic? Like what steps did you take to keep it authentic, both in story and portrayal?
Is this for me?
Yes.
Well, the amazing thing about television, this is my first time in TV, and really getting to experience like a writer's room and to really understand like the collaborative nature of the medium it's so crucial, especially for telling like a large ensemble show that features a lot of various communities. It's important to have folks from those communities in the room, and be it as a writer, but also we had the opportunity, thankfully, working with Peacock and NBCU to be able to also hire consultants, also some of which are in this chat right now, to read scripts and give ideas and stuff, to be able to make sure that we're doing this authentically. You know, it's an important part of telling these stories is to involve communities who, you know, who the stories are about. It's a no-brainer, really.
Well, I mean, for you, but I mean, it should be. Yeah, that was very much on our minds in the lab, Respectability Lab, and it came up many times. Like, so it's just so wonderful to hear that from you. That of course, people need to be in the writers' room that represent these communities. So, thank you for that. I'm gonna move over to Ryan now. So, I mean, you've worked in other writers' rooms. Like, what was it like working in this one? And like, what did you want to make sure you got right?
Oh my God, this it was really fun. I mean, it was just a hodgepodge of people and it was really exciting. But I think, you know, Steve and I met in 2019. We had a very glamorous dinner at Sunset Tower. We got along like gangbusters. And like he was telling me he was developing Queer as Folk. And I remember like checking in with him like over the literal years, because it took literally years to get it made. And I had just finished Special Truly when I think it got greenlit. So the timing was chef's kiss. He sent me the pilot. I read it, I loved it. The character of Marvin snapped, crackled, and popped off the page. I was so excited. Then me and Stephen had a meeting about it. He's like, "Oh, I also want you to be in it." And I was like, "Oh my God, twist, 2 disabled people? Is that even legal? Like, oh my God." So I was really, really excited because like Stephen really just like, it was truly, truly collaborative, and he let me bring my own stuff to it. So I felt creatively very liberated. And it was also very liberating to write for a show where there were 2 queer disabled people that were wildly different from each other and weren't necessarily friends. And I really loved that, because I feel like, you know, people might think, oh, the 2 disabled characters, they're gonna get along, they're gonna be BFF, like Crip power, et cetera, et cetera. But anyone that's been a member of a marginalized community knows that it doesn't really work that way. And sometimes the call can come, sometimes the call can come from inside the house. So, you know, it was really exciting to also just dive into those 2 characters and kind of figure out, you know, why they weren't so close, like, and also kind of drawing, you know, their commonalities out too. And yeah, it was just truly a gift, because I never felt restricted. I always felt encouraged to kind of bring my own things to it. And so it was a real joyous experience, because that's not always the case, you know what I mean? But Stephen gave me the space and gave everyone the space to kind of do their thing, which made it a really fun experience.
Yeah, and that shines through. Like, and I'd seen on like social media people posting like Juliet Lewis, like, and about Stephen's like openness and vulnerability and space for that. So and I love that idea of like, yeah, they're not going to be the same, and the intersections of who those characters are like also separates them. So love that. I like this question, so I'm going to say it as is. You have a history of showing things on TV that are new in terms of sex, queerness, and disability. Was there anything you wanted to highlight in the series that hadn't been seen before on television?
Well, yeah, disabled orgy.
Of course.
I never checked that off the list with Special. My bad. Drag you straight to hell. No, I mean, I think having a sex positive inclusive orgy, honey, that like let's fucking party. You know what I mean? That was truly a history making moment for sure. And I think always just like showcasing sex in a very real, authentic way. I mean, I think the sex scene between Marvin and Ali in episode 4 is truly, truly so beautiful. And you know, but it's also, there's also people just fucking. So there's all kinds of sex, you know what I mean? There's emotional sex, there's just fucking for the sake of fucking sex, you know, all the varieties. So that was a true bucket list moment for sure.
I think I loved it when like I don't know, was it Brody or someone, like when they were preparing, or this might have been a different episode, but like the presence of like even poppers, and it's like I know like the majority of like straight people will not know what that is, but like
Sad.
like it's just funny.
Yeah.
Well, bravo, it's like so good. I love that episode. Okay, Andrew, let's move
Hello.
to you. So yeah, you came on as a consultant for the show, episode 4, hashtag fuck disabled people. Yeah, what did that entail?
I mean, as an overall consultant, I got to read the script, I got to give my ideas, and I got to really like, and I love being able to do that. And I love being able to send across what I would do if I was this character, how it would be, how to make it authentic, because typically if you write a disabled character in a script, there's no authenticity there usually. So it was really my favorite part of consulting was really not any of the stuff I did in front of the camera. I love being behind and being able to say, well, here's what I would do, here's how I would pitch this, here's what I might say, knowing that they may or may not use it, but knowing that regardless, there was an authentic voice who gave an opinion, and that for me was exciting. And then when I I had a call with some of the writers one day, and I said, well, you know, I had a disabled orgy back in 2015. Why don't we kind of use that experience a little bit for the show? And they were like, do you want to come down and be in it? And I was like, okay, sure. So that all got worked out, and then I got to fly down to be a part of it, which was really, for me, it was a big bucket list moment, because it meant all the stuff that I had dreamed about that representation was coming true, and I got to have a hand in that.
Yeah, I mean the straw comment.
I
I
mean,
like, that was just, I was like, this is pure Andrew. Like I just love that you made that. Like, so, straws need to exist for.
I was the most nervous doing this. I was so nervous.
Oh, you can tell.
Really? Yeah, I
No,
can tell.
you're so
So
good.
nervous. Oh my goodness.
So good.
You're so good and like hot. It was just great, and you kind of answered a lot of questions there. But I love that. I love that move from consultant into, because yeah, Picture This is like one of my favorite documentaries by the NFB, and it like it focuses on you and your work, your incredible work as a disabled sex advocate. We're talking about sex, and it's because of you. Like it's, yeah. Anyway, go on.
I mean,
I will just say, like Andrew's a huge part of, like, from the very beginning. Andrew was a consultant as well, and the Crip Rave that Andrew threw in Toronto was a big inspiration for the one in the show. Like it's a lot of the work that Andrew does, and the visibility that that he's created is a lot of it is in the show, and exists in the character of Marvin. Like I've always been really impressed with their work, and I'm very grateful that we were able to actually work together in this way finally after.
Thank you. I mean, it was such a, I mean, it's something that on my bucket list and on my list of professional things that I've done. It's like, I got to be a part of like the most iconic queer show on television. Like that's incredible. And I remember when we wrapped the sex scene, which I was also fucking terrified to do. But when we wrapped, the director was like, you all of you have helped make the like an iconic scene in television, and to know that something I did brought this together so that the next generation of queer disabled people can see that and be like, wow, this existed, this is real, it's mind-blowing that something I did that I never thought would go anywhere has now been immortalized on television.
Mm-hmm.
Well, but of course, like you do so much work for the community, like a sex toy developed by disabled people for disabled people, podcast, a documentary, like you are out there and you created the hashtag disabled people are hot. Like,
Mhm.
yeah, I just fucking love you. I just have to say that. And respect you so much.
Thank you.
There's no one more prolific than Andrew Gurza. Like,
Yeah.
I mean,
So
oh, you're making me blush right now. Like, what?
all of you watching, please go and follow Andrew Gurza. What's your handle? Or should we?
Andrew Gurza 1 on all the places because I
Yeah.
got tired of all the changes and I was like, well, just have it be what? Andrew Gurza 1 because I don't want to change it anymore. It's fine.
Awesome. Awesome. So you answered a bunch of questions in one. But I know you and I have talked about this like personally about the importance of like power chair users, you know, because we always see like misrepresented like manual wheelchair users like that are played by able-bodied actors, which is horrible. But you never see like power chair users. So can you speak a little bit about that? Like,
Yeah, I mean, that's really important for me because, shocker, I'm a power chair user, so that's what I use every day. But
Yeah.
also, you know, only seeing manual chair users, and they are just as important as power chair users. But in terms of film and television representation, only seeing that presents this idea that you have to be athletic, you have to be semi-independent, you have to be able to do certain things for yourself. And it doesn't show complex disabilities. And when you have CP like I have, I consider it a complex disability. So it's multiple different ways disability shows up in my body at one time. And seeing a power chair user, most people assume that power chair users are not sexual, they're not independent, they have no agency. And so I am very, very a loud advocate of we need to show different types of chair users in media because we need to see them as valuable too. And I don't think we're doing that enough. So to be able to see that on the Queer as Folk set, one of my favorite things that I saw when I was on set, little did I know that I would be in it after I saw it, but I saw one of the Hoyer lifts that was on set. And I remember walking around the set with my mom the day that we shot. And I was just so excited to see stuff that I use in my bedroom every day on a
Right.
TV set used as a prop for like a sex scene around disability. It was so surreal because we don't see those things in
No.
popular media. And so to see it in a sexy way was the coolest thing ever.
And it wasn't only just seen, like one of the characters said like Hoyer lift. Like I'm like, oh, I love that, like that was actually like voiced.
Yeah.
I think it was Noah, maybe. I'm not sure. And
no,
Yeah.
it says it.
yeah, it was just like, I'm like, oh my God, like that's amazing that that is in there. Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, I agree. I think that's so important, and this opened a door for more of that, and hopefully you acting those roles.
Not that I'm a good actor or anything. I'm certainly not of the caliber of the other gentleman in the chat right now, but
Oh, honey,
I
you
try.
were great.
Oh, stop,
No.
stop it.
Seriously, it was very natch.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
Andrew,
was
stop
the most
self-deprecating.
awkward.
No, you
No.
weren't.
It did not come off that way at
Oh
all.
wow. Okay, good. Because I wasn't feeling that way when it was happening.
It was so good. And yeah, I was just like squealing. Okay, I want to like talk a little bit about your podcast because it's so like radical. And it like I'm curious as to how it kind of bled into your experience as a consultant and actor, like, and how it informed your work with the show. Like disability after
mean,
dark. Yeah.
I mean, I think I don't know if it directly informed kind of any of the consulting work for the show or kind of what I did, but I think my candidness on the show, and I've spoken with Ryan on the show before, and I've had him as a guest multiple times, and you, Scott, on the show. Like I think my candid discussion of sex and disability and the way I talked about it without any filter, without any like fear of people being afraid of it, and just talking about it openly. When people listen to that, they go, "Oh wow, I never have heard somebody be so honest about sex and disability before." Wow. So I think that those kind of episodes where I talk openly about sexuality and disability led itself to people going, "Wow, this is somebody that we should tap into for consulting work because they're
Mhm.
honest about stuff." And I think a lot of disability work, if we even dare talk about sex, it's very sanitized. It's very like, it's very removed from like discussion of fucking and what it is. And so my view on all that stuff is like, let's go right in there and talk about accessibility and talk about all those things openly. And sure, if people are uncomfortable, that's great, because then maybe they'll learn something and become more comfortable as they go.
Yeah, amazing. I just want to like snap away until my thumbs are gone. Yeah, the work that you're doing just is amazing. And the frankness, and then you also expanded beyond just sex. Like you also talk about this day-to-day lived experiences and the emotional journey that, you know, comes with your disability and also disability in general. And yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's something we're missing in disability discourse. It's very, very sanitized right now. Even when we do get into it, like usually I'm asked to come and speak on special panels about sex and disability, which is great, and I'm thankful for that. But also, like, this should be something we're talking about every day. So on my social media and on the platforms that I control, I try to make very clear that we're going to talk about disability every day, all the time. It isn't a special episode of, it's every day.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so this question is open to all of you. What should studios, networks, and productions do to make accessibility a priority going forward? I mean, clearly it was on this show, but like going forward, because sometimes, you know, we've seen in history, like Madeline won the Best Actress Award for Children of a Lesser God. I don't know the name of it, but then we never saw another deaf actress or actor win. And Coda, you know, it's just a worry that like, okay, it's once in a while. Like, how can we make it? What do you think needs to happen to make it like a regular thing that's incorporated?
I have a few things that I think are really important. One, it's very on any day, it's really difficult to navigate getting into the film industry and the television industry. It's very complex, and I think organizations like Respectability are crucial for creating a platform for storytellers who are differently abled to be able to, at the core, come up with ideas that are, you know, that can be bought, sold, licensed, whatever. Like it's creating a platform and a bridge for education and creating connections. I think that's crucial for getting into the industry. But I also think, like, in a production side, something that I was really important to us going into Queer as Folk was making sure that our sets and our stages and our offices were accessible, because it's usually you know, it was the same issue. Like, I'm from, as you know, Scott, like in Newfoundland, it's like not a very accessible city. It's all hills, there's stairs. I remember that night we went to the gay bar, and it's just like in the middle of a set of stairs. Like it's
And
it,
you took me up to the bathroom, remember? And like, man, yeah, wow. Anyway.
yeah, no, and the film sets are often sort of those kinds of environments. It's unfortunately, accessibility is far too often a bit of an afterthought. And for us going into the show, you know, we had a lot of talks with our line producer to make sure that, and our ADs to make sure that no matter what day it was, no matter who was on set, our sets had to be accessible. It's a that's like ground zero and like number one most important thing. But I also want to see more. That's from a production standpoint. But I think, you know, in getting into the industry, it's really important to have like samples and have connections and have written work if you're going to be at the core of a central of storytelling. And I think that Respectability and these kinds of organizations are doing really incredible work to make those connections for folks to get into the industry. That's my thoughts.
I had to say that, like, I don't get an inkling of like able-bodied saviorism from you at all. It's just like in every sense, I feel like you just exude this true belief that everyone needs to be included. And so like that's a beautiful thing. And I'm so grateful that you're in the industry and like mainstream industry. And I can't wait to see the change that will come from what you're doing. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Anyone else want to speak
I
to that?
You know, I think we need people behind the camera. I think we need it at all points of production. I think we need stories written by disabled people, which is why Ryan O'Connell is one of my contemporaries, and I am so thankful for the work that he's done in putting it out there, because we don't have stories like that. One of the things that rings in my head whenever I think about disabled storytelling is he's like, I want to tell disabled stories all the time, and I'm going to do it all the time.
Mhm.
And I think that's so valuable, and we don't have enough of that. And I think we need all of these pieces to come together. But in terms of like, how do we make the industry more accessible? We need to hire consultants like to be production consultants on shows, even if they're not in the show, if they're in the background providing script ideas. We need to have these voices so that we can see this diversity we're craving. And I think a lot of directors and people in production are too afraid to confront their own ableism first. And I think if we took all the big producers in Hollywood and said, like, let's talk about ableism for a day, how could your sets be less ableist? They'd probably freak the fuck out, but at least we'd start a conversation about how we can change Hollywood. And we're doing, like, Stephen's done this, but on a larger scale, this is not being done. And I think if we talked about ableism more in the industry openly and allowed for people to, and production teams to be uncomfortable a little bit around their own ableism, then we could move things forward.
I have to say that respectability, there were some very uncomfortable conversations with like certain studios, like about that very fact, because it's like we are the largest demographic that is a minority, and there's so many intersections in that demographic. So why are we not in the writer's room? Why are we not, directing? Why are we not writing? So I completely agree.
You need to give more disabled people power. I mean, 1 in 4 people identify as disabled, and I would say that scammers have more representation in Hollywood than disabled people, which is just really sad. So I think it really is not it's really, as writers, I know that there's a show on Apple TV right now, Best Foot Forward, that half the writer's room was disabled, which like was groundbreaking, but it shouldn't, because the lead was fucking disabled. So like, duh, like of course you would like, like you wouldn't have a female lead or a female centric show and have all men. Not anymore. You used to, but not anymore. So I think it really is about giving disabled people jobs, and really empowering them and giving them real positions of power. Which is still unfortunately medium rare. And disabled content, honey. There's not much. It's tumbleweed.
And paying them too. Let's pay them for what they're giving you.
Right.
Yeah, of course.
Because that doesn't happen often either.
And I think Ryan, exactly what Andrew said. Like, you were trailblazing in that sense. It's like, well, Special was very special to me and everyone from the disabled community, because it was like, oh, okay, finally, like we're seeing something like on Netflix, and something very good, like, and funny and light, but also like poignant. So
well, it's frustrating to me that there hasn't been like an heir to that show. Like there's not, like, it's frustrating to me that like we're here like a couple years later and there's not like a, there's Best Foot Forward, which was great, but like there's not much else in terms of like a disabled lead, especially not coming from an actual disabled creator. And that's just, to me, like unacceptable. TBH.
It's that like worry of like, okay, we have Coda now, like, and that's good enough.
Yeah, like we did it, we're good.
We did it, great. Oh, good job. Yeah. So
yeah,
I agree.
It's not chic.
Well, yeah. Thank you. I want to remind everyone that they can be like putting their questions into the chat box, or if they need to, they can also email Lauren at laurena@respectability.org. So while we're waiting for those to come in, there just are a couple more questions. Yeah, I guess insights that could help disabled creators get into the industry, like what, how could, like, tips for creators who want to get into television, resources or tools. Maybe it's a bleak answer, but like, still, we need to hear it regardless. And yeah, can you speak about that?
I feel such anxiety when people ask me that question because there's so many different pathways to breaking into the business, and there's not like one correct way. I will say a mentality I've always had is like, I'm just a tenacious bitch from hell, and like I kind of have like the confidence of a mediocre street white male, and I always have. So it's sort of like, and I write like every day. I'm like a true psycho about writing, and so like between like the work being constant and just being like a tenacious bugaboo, that like I think that has sort of served me well. Yeah.
I also think like being rejection is like a huge part of this
Yes.
industry, and it's
Yes.
really hard to navigate because it's, you know, any creator or artistically minded person will always put a lot of themselves out there when you do that. And I think it's crucial entering the industry to not be afraid of that rejection, not to take it personally, to just trudge forward and find your people. Community is really important within this industry as well. And like building those relationships with folks, it's even in small ways. But like Ryan said, like really being a tenacious bitch from hell is actually a little bit crucial. Like you kind of have to keep creating in the face of rejection, in the face of opposition, and make sure that you continue to tell those stories and put them out there. But for me, I'll say like practically, it was programs like I did the TIFF Talent Lab in Toronto. That I learned a lot of more like spiritual approaches to film in that. Whereas I also went to film school. I went to I can't remember what it's been renamed to.
Metropolitan Toronto U or something.
Yeah,
Metropolitan Toronto U.
Toronto.
And I went to film school, and so in film school, I just got practice making work. It's really, people want to see that you've created something before, you know, whether it's a script or it's an actual like film or documentary or short film. Having something going into it, having a little package of work, playing at a film festival, all those things really matter. It's a lot of work, but it's every project I've ever worked on has always been a stepping stone to another. Like it started with short films, started with very, very low budget short films, which turned into a bigger short film or a longer short film. You know, it takes time, and it takes patience, and it requires support, honestly. And it's important to, most important, I think, to separate your ego and your self-esteem from work. That is a death nail. I think if you're acquiring your self-esteem from that external validation of like, it makes it so much harder. So I think it's important to stay focused on telling stories that really mean something to you, in many different ways. That's what
yeah, like just that rejection part really resonates, because I feel like how you react from failure determines your success. Like people have such a thin skin, and I understand, but there's so much emotional bottoming that happens in this business. Like, in how you deal with that really, really determines your future.
Could you just define for us emotional bottoming, please?
Emotional bottoming is like
Oh my
it's truly like taking it up the ass, like figuratively speaking. Like you're gonna be trolled so much. You're gonna have people that don't get you, that don't understand you, that don't know your work. You know what I mean? Like, and you can't let that completely like deactivate you and destabilize you. Like, I actually take rejection as an opportunity. I mean, I also like get out of bed every day to like avenge my enemies. But like, you know, like that's been really helpful for me. But it's like I think a lot of people, because ego is so fused into our work and all that stuff, I think people can be really take it hard. And I have to say, like, as someone who's made a show and achieved a modicum of success in this business, the failure does not stop. Like, there's never a point where you're like, I'm good. I mean, maybe for a few people, they reach a point where they can just truly, like, you know, everything they touch turns to gold, whatever. But like, you know, it's still very difficult. It never truly gets a ton easier. But and truly how you bounce back from things not working out will set the tone. And if you are able to do that, and you're just, I mean, I look at things as like, okay, next thing. Do you know what I mean? And that mentality has really served me well, and it's the reason why I've been able to work consistently for the last 10 years in this business, which is hard, you know.
I think also for, you know, smaller creators that might be watching this, you don't have to create and think, okay, I have to get this to Hollywood. There are platforms now like Twitter and Instagram and TikTok that can catapult you into the spotlight, whether you want to be there or not. So like, I think that, you know, a lot of disabled creators are using those platforms to make a name for themselves, which can then lead to a production company calling you saying, hey, do you want to do Chris Folk, or do you want to do this thing? Like, a lot of my stuff lives on Twitter and Instagram, and I don't go searching for the next Hollywood project. People approach me because they see what I do in disability on this platform and say, oh, that's cool, we want to work with you. So I think this idea that we have to go right from like a writing exercise to a lab to Hollywood in 2022, that's sort of not really necessarily the way you have to do it. And I think for a lot of disability creators, that access to different platforms is really vital.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. And I think, like you said it, you don't have to be making art that is like Hollywood. It can be independent, it can be whatever you want it to be. And I love that point. We should pivot to some audience questions now, because I think we're nearing the end. But thank you three for just such great answers. First one, I would pose this question to Stephen. For disabled individuals looking to get into directing, and maybe you just answered this, what advice do you have when they may be unable to do some of the physical aspects that are required of individuals in jobs typically done to get to the director level, but are otherwise 100% qualified for the position? Okay, so that's
well, in any situation, when it comes to directing, having short film work is crucial. As I've learned, it's very, especially in television, it's really important to have samples of other work. And I can't speak to anyone's specific needs, but I do think that like having attendance and support in when you're approaching like a directing field is like, and also like assistance as well. Like no director can do their job without having any kind of support. So I can't really speak to the specifics as it's a bit broader, but I do think that like finding a way, like there's no rule book. Like people have written rule books on like how to make films and stuff like that, but really they can be made any kind of way. Like for instance, what's it called? The Wes Anderson didn't go on set for Mr. Fox, was Talented Mr. Fox or whatever, like that movie. And even like with COVID, directors are when a director gets COVID, oftentimes they don't stop production. They give the director a camera, and they direct from their hotel rooms that they're they're trapped in. So there's a lot of ways in which to do it, and I think that it's just important to navigate filmmaking in the way that is you're able to, because it's an adaptable industry. It really is. It doesn't always want to be, but it can be, and especially if you're creating your own content or your own short films, there's a lot of different ways to approach it.
Mhm. Thank you. This is another one directed to you, I believe. This is from Diane Wright. Can you share the specific ways you're using your privilege as as white men in the industry to broaden access for others? Such a good question. Ryan?
Yeah. So I felt like when I did special, I felt like for the first time that I had a modicum of power, in the sense that I was able to give people jobs. And to me, I felt like Oprah. Like I felt like you get a job and you get a job and you get a job. And like, and
sorry,
like
it's not the reference.
it was important for me to hire people that maybe typically wouldn't necessarily get away in. When special ended, I think the only way that I can really right now kind of achieve that is by helping people that if they need feedback on a script or this or that. That is sort of the way that I can do it right now. I think it's important to kind of always be in service to in some way, but depending on where I'm at with my work, like it can either be giving them a job on a literal show or giving them notes on a script. You know what I mean? I think I just try to be conscious that I'm always doing something that is of service.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I think when we were creating, as we were staffing and hiring our team on Queer as Folk, that was just something that we knew we were telling stories from a very like wide set of communities on the show. And so in order to do that, it was crucial for us to hire a writer's room that was a reflection of the characters we were going to be seeing on screen. So I think that is the magic of being Oprah on a television show is like you do get to hire your team, and it's really important when you're doing any show that's trying to represent these communities to actually put bums in seats for those writers' rooms. It's important to do so authentically.
Awesome.
I think it's just about recognizing your privilege. I know I'm a white disabled person, and I know there are a lot of other white disabled people that take up space, but we have to sometimes sit down and shut up and let other people with different experiences of disability and disabled people of color to have the spotlight. They deserve it, and they have a different experience. And yes, we're all in it together, but we cannot be ignorant to our own privilege. And so a lot of the time I spend time on my podcast and on my platforms uplifting other voices, being like, I'm going to shut up now and let you tell your story, because they've heard mine before. They know who I am. Maybe they don't know who you are, and they should. So I'll stop speaking and give you a platform. If I can use my platforms to elevate someone else, I would rather do that.
Mm-hmm. And just like move, yeah, like you said, make space, and that, yeah, wonderful. Okay, those are really all the questions we can take because we're at time. But I just really want to thank the three of you for your like candidness, your vulnerability, and your wisdom, sharing all of that with us. And I'll take a moment just to thank RespectAbility for providing this platform, and NBCU Launch for organizing this enlightening conversation. To learn more about the NBCU Launch team and get the latest updates on their programs and initiatives, please visit their website, nbcuniversallaunch.com, which will be in the chat box, or join the social media community at NBCU Launch on Twitter and Instagram. And to learn more about Respectability's work, which is so important in the entertainment industry, please visit respectability.org. Check out the chat for Respectability's social media handles as well. And again, thank you to everyone watching, and thank you to our panelists for your time and just your openness. It's been a really great conversation. Thank you.
For more information, visit www.respectability.org.